My name's Elijah and welcome to my podcast, Songwriting for Songwriters. Joining me today is Mutter Slater. Mutter was frontman in the 70s band Stackridge, who were the very first band to ever play, open and finish the first Glastonbury Festival. We speak about that festival experience, working with George Martin, being signed by Elton John, Mutter's solo career with the Mutter Slater Band, how he writes songs, the importance of releasing music, and much, much more. So please enjoy this podcast, subscribe, and thank you for being here. Okay, joining me today on my Songwriting for Songwriters podcast is Mutter Slater. Mutter, how are you doing?
Fine, thanks. Yeah, very well.
Good.
How are you, Elijah?
I'm good, thanks, mate. Nice to have a bit of sun in the West Dorset region.
Yes, yeah.
Fantastic. Now, listen, obviously, you may or may not know, but I've been doing this podcast for a while now with lots of different songwriters exploring their take on songwriting, really, their kind of process and all those kind of big sort of subjects. So you're someone who I've been, has been on my list to speak to. Firstly, because I love your songwriting, and it's luckily for me, I get to hear it quite often because we live in the same neck of the woods.
Yeah, we do.
We do. So my first question to you is when did you start writing songs, and what or who inspired you to start writing songs?
My first foray was because when I was in bands when I was at school, I was tended to be the lead singer and blues harp player, so I didn't particularly play an instrument, so I had nothing to write on per se. So my initial forays into the songwriting world were purely lyrical. I was writing lyrics with the guitarist in the band that we had at school or around that age, teenage years. So I remembered the lyric, the title to the first song there is very much of its time. If you imagine 1967, it was called Embryonic Dream.
Awesome.
there's a confession for you.
Yeah. But that must have been like an amazing time to because to me, I grew up in the 90s, and so 67 to me is like the kind of 67, 68, 69 feels to me like a kind of land of impossibly brilliant times to live through and listen to music. So was that a very rich cultural time to be that age and start writing?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we were spoiled rotten, really.
Yeah.
You had, like the pop charts. You don't only have the Beatles and the Stones, obviously, but you have bands like the Amen Corner, the Fortunes, the Move. They're all coming out with great songs, great singles.
Yeah.
So it was a rich, inspirational time. Then, of course, Hendrix arrived and Led Zeppelin getting in the end. So it was, it's very inspiring sort of time to do it. Yeah.
So you were starting out really predominantly as the front man and lyric writer, being the kind of main sort of the Jagger role kind of thing, as in the band.
But we did mainly covers in the band because that's what kids do, isn't it? So then the guitarist and I decided we'd had enough of being in a band and we were going to do a duo, and that's when I sort of I got a flute on a whim because I thought I'd better learn to play something else. So I got the flute and we started doing, again, covers, a few Traffic songs and one or two others, but we did start writing songs together. So then I was sort of doing more lyrics, and they're a bit more sensible than Embryonic Dream. And then, of course, after that didn't last very long because he got married. So that was the end of his musical career. And and then I sort of ended up in Bristol and joined Stackridge, and that was and Stackridge is a purely all original stuff.
Yeah.
So then it was more. I seriously started to think about writing proper songs. No, so I was at somewhere where there was a piano, so I sort of I could bang one or two chords out on a piano. So that's where it really started in earnest.
So when you joined Stackridge, they were already an entity before you joined. Is that right?
Well, not really much. I think they'd done one gig.
Okay.
And then I joined, and so it was a state of flux because I think there was an organist, a Hammond player, who thankfully left after a few gigs because that was a nightmare lugging a Hammond up and downstairs. Yeah. So it was a time of flux. The first sort of 6 months of 1970. Their only gig was in Christmas '69, and then the first half of 1970, people came and went in the lineup.
Yeah.
And then sort of probably, by mid-70, we'd got the established lineup, which recorded the first 3 albums together.
Yeah. So in Stackridge, how would you say? How did the writing? How was the kind of writing partnerships, or how did that come? How did that work?
But James Warren, he used to write everything. No, he'd have a set of a total song. He'd have all the chords, all the verses, all the lyrics done, which was completely different than the way that Andy did his. Andy had nice bits of music, and so I had an idea of what the vocals should be like. He didn't write any lyrics, so Crun, the bass player, he wrote the lyrics for Andy's songs. And then we just keep busking them at practice. And then an arrangement would take shape, and there'd be like a little sort of a instrumental background thing, and I'd come up with some melodies on the flute, which sort of got me into a solo. So there was little instrumental pieces that I was writing in the early days. But James and Andy and Crun with his lyrics were the sole songwriters on the first album. Which was mainly James's songs. So that was all my contribution, not mentioned, but that is just writing the flute parts basically.
Sure,
playing flute solos. Yeah.
So that's quite an interesting thing to be in, isn't it? Because I've always been like, you are now, and we'll get onto that, but like in the Mutter Slater Band, it is obviously by the title of the band, it is your baby, and you are as far as I'm aware, the chief songwriter. But it's quite an interesting position to be in a band where there's other writers, and it's where they're kind of doing their thing. When you're in those early days of Stackridge, did you kind of find that you wanted to put your, like the George Harrison, did you want to get your songs out there as well? Was there a kind of because bands are known for like sort of internal battles with writing and all that kind of thing. Was that ever a thing, or was that a kind of, did it just grow? Did you grow as a writer through kind of, being part of these records and the writers' songs?
Well, it sort of, I think, I'm not putting myself up with George Harrison, but I think in those circumstances, you think, and like I say, when we weren't playing or rehearsing or doing anything, I'd be sort of tinkering away on a piano when I could. And of course, as I progressed on the piano, I started coming up with things that I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. And then, so then I knew that if it was going to figure in any album by the band or on stage within the band, it had to measure up.
Sure.
Because Andy and James were quite sort of forthright in their opinions.
Sure.
So which upped your game really, which is good. It's fair enough. Saves a lot of embarrassing. You sort of get like, as you know, when sometimes you write a song and you think, oh, that's all right. And you listen to it back the next day and you think, oh my God, what was I thinking? So I sort of they were like the filter system to test the value song.
That's quite a good thing. Yeah.
I had the second album, I had one short instrumental piano piece on. And then by the time we got to the third one, which is The Man in the Bowler Hat, I think I'd written most of the songs on that. Or I had to share the songs.
Yeah, sure. So quite a rapid transition in a way, really.
Well, yeah, but I just hit hit a seam, I hit a rich seam of songwriting,
Yeah.
as you know how it goes. Sometimes you hit you hit the seam and you go with it.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
the times where you get nothing,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
acceptable, it's a desolate.
Do you think that's quite interesting, that? Because there's definitely many songwriters who have those runs, don't they? Like, because we just mentioned George. Like, George at the end of the Beatles had that kind of very prolific period, which he probably arguably didn't get back again. There's like Richard Ashcroft and the Verve of Urban Hymns had a moment. Well, it's funny that that can come together, can't it, sometimes? And it's like, it's quite hard to kind of nail down when that's happening or
Yeah.
not. But do you, I'm someone who basically writes all the time. And I think you do as well. I imagine you do because you're quite prolific. But when you get those runs, do you think there's any way of qualifying or quantifying why there's a run on?
No, because after the Man in the Bowler Hat, I think I might have written like 3 pieces of music, and I got a feeling that a couple of them I was already tinkering with when we were recording Man in the Bowler Hat. But anyway, but after that I had a real lean period,
right,
where I wasn't writing much at all.
Right.
But thankfully there was a change in lineup in the band, so Andy had another writing partner, Rob Bokett, and so there was still plenty of material to go on the albums. So, but yeah, I don't know why it suddenly. I think I got married, and it wasn't anything, but there was a sort of the thing where my wife was living in Yeovil, but I was spending nearly all my time in London. So it's one of those sort of this sort of stuff going on in your brain all the time.
Sure.
And also, if you're busy on the road and recording and rehearsing in a band, it's having those quiet periods where you can just pick up a guitar or sit by a piano and let your brain float away. Because I find that's how it works for me. I just hit something by accident, think, oh, that's interesting, and then I get absorbed by it. But
so that's kind of your, like, it's almost, so your process yourself now, or like what you've developed is like you find a piece of music that interests you, and then what happens after that? You just kind of go into, is it music first then lyrics, or talk us through your way of working, like how you write a song?
Yeah, but well, now with the Mutter Slater Band, it's all on guitar. I haven't got a keyboard at all. So I'll just sit down, I'll pick up the guitar and noodle away, or do something, and then just nothing at all, really, just mucking about certain chords, and then I think, oh, that's interesting change, and then sort of keep going over that sequence and come up with a melody to sing on top, and I think, oh, where can we go from here? And so now I've been doing it a lot longer. I hear a chord before the next chord that I haven't got yet.
Yeah,
I can hear it in my head.
Yeah,
but of course I'm not trained musically, so I have to sort of. I don't know what they're called, these chords, but obviously I know the majors and minors. But some of the other ones, I don't know. So, but if I can hear it in the chord in my head, the change, then I can go work it out on the guitar.
That's exactly the same to me. Yeah, because I'm not trained either. So like basically I'll hear the chord and then sometimes it will take a good 20 minutes or even a day to find what that chord is I'm hearing. And it's quite difficult to find it. And then it's like, oh, okay, there you are. But something that I quite like about not being musically trained is having those inspiration, hearing it in your head, because maybe you don't go to sometimes, and this isn't a criticism of like people that really know their keys and where they are, they kind of go for like what they know works, where if you're not musically trained, you're sort of like jumping over a hedge and just seeing what happens on the other side.
I hope it's not too far to fall the other side.
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes you do fall, but I guess you're leaning into your instinct more, aren't you, as a writer? I think that way.
Yeah, that's what I absolutely, and that's what I love about it. Really, the mystery about it, the magic.
Yeah.
Yes, rather than think, oh, we're in that key with let's go to that, or let's do that. Obviously, you do that sometimes, and sometimes when I'm thinking a chord and I'm trying different shapes and one thing and another, it turns out it's a minor chord with a different bass note or something.
Yeah.
It's just
it's
or yes, it can be a simple answer, but other times when I'm because what happens when I've got a song and I think, oh yeah, I'll take that to the practice. So I take it to practice and I'll play it to the rest of the guys, and I say, oh, it starts off in this key and chord and all that. And I said, this chord, I've no idea what it's called, but it's got these notes in it. And so, but Chris, the guitarist, and Tom, they sort of pick it up really quickly.
That's funny though, because I have the same thing with my band, where the musicians in the band are far better musicians than me, and they'll ask me what was a chord or key is that, and I'll be like, G thing. I've written it down as G thing with a thing. It's like, I don't really know, but like I said, I think that naivety is actually, like you say, it kind of keeps things exciting and mysterious, which is important to me, and it sounds like it's important to you as a writer as well.
And then it sort of it impresses yourself as well, but sort of encourages you to carry on, because you think, oh, I can't believe I came up with that. And when you haven't really, it's just the way the brain's sort of snapping around and one thing and another. So it's great. It's really, there's one a song which we'll be working on tonight. I haven't written the words for it yet, but which answers your question earlier on. It's always the tune first, and then I'll do some lyrics.
Exactly.
Because we need to play it in the band, because some bits musically don't work, doesn't. Or I'll get, when we're playing together, I think, oh, that may be quite nice if we do this there, and then I'll come up with another idea. So I don't tend to write the lyrics until it's pretty well worked out with the band.
Oh, that's cool.
But the song I'm working on at the moment is one of these things in because I said, oh, I don't know what key it's in, because it starts on B flat. The verse starts on A flat, and there's another section which is on what's it on? Oh, another section is F minor. So I said, I have no idea what key it's in.
Yeah,
it's got three different sections. No, more than that. 4 different sections. So it's got a verse, it's got a chorus, and it's got 2 other instrumental bits with a bit of. Anyway, it's a magnum opus, which will probably go on at the end of the next album, because that's usually where I put the magnum opuses.
I like what you're saying though about like having that, taking a song, a piece of music and a melody to a band, having not finished it, and allowing that, because I'm a big believer that when you've got sometimes when I go do gigs or showcases, I'll have like 70% of a song, and I will generally have sort of most of the lyrics, but if there's a bit I can't finish, I'll just play it live and see what happens, because then you don't know where the brain's going to go. And it sounds like a bit when you're rehearsing with the band, their input or you playing it in a room is, you're still making decisions and allowing yourself to be in a creative space with the band to see what happens. I think that's quite a rare. I haven't heard that actually on this Songwriting podcast. Someone fleshing it out with the band, you know.
Well, no, on all the MSB albums, certainly the past 3, 4, the band do the arrangements. I always sort of try and make a point on the album of saying all songs written by Mutter Slater, arrangements by MSB or something.
Great.
Because that's how, and that's what, and I think that's important, because I just love the way we play together, the way we connect with each other musically. And they sort of they get it like that, and it just makes the song so much stronger.
Yeah, I mean, that's important. I think that idea of collaboration and trusting your band, because your band are great. I've seen them a few times, and the thing is, it's quite difficult for a band to I think sometimes to take someone's song and do it justice, but make it feel like it's their song. You know, it's not like they're not a backing band to your song. That feels like the band's song. And the thing I love the most about your band is like the way that they are able to be light and move and be heavy, but it's all so like well applied. Like every member of your band's a very, very good musician. They create space for you to be center point, but they can all move, and it sounds very together, but like dynamic. It's a brilliant band, and anyone who's listening here, if they haven't seen the Mutter Slater Band, they should, and if you haven't heard the albums, you should, because it's quality writing and quality playing, and very kind of, I don't know. It really it's there's an R&B influence in your songwriting, isn't there? There's like a kind of bluesy influence.
It's sort of 60s soul. No, sort of the Motown stacks. I used to love those Wilson Pickett or Otis Redding, Sam and Dave stuff. Like you say, blues and 60s R&B. They are my, because that's what we were playing when I was a teenager in our sort of like school band sort of thing, was blues and R&B stuff. So it's I've sort of gone back to that really, because Stackridge definitely weren't doing that.
But there's also it's, you know, within that sound, which is in many ways like it's quite a British sort of sound actually, but there's within the kind of your lyrical observations and what you sing about and talk about, that's quite a unique thing, isn't it? It's definitely a Mutter like voice in these songs. You know, where lyrically, what inspires you to write songs lyrically? What situations or life? Where are you coming from? Do you think what captures your imagination?
Snatches of conversation, or I tend to, if the next album would be dealing with some sort of serious things, some political, some not, some ecological, but I like writing about these things, but with a but that they're under the surface. The surface is sort of something that just sounds like a typical bluesy sort of lyric, or it's or a bit like Dylan used to do in his early years. He used to use sort of odd imagery in his lyrics. Then you realise underneath it all, he was really sort of some of them were just out and out fantasy lyrics, but I sort of tend to try and cover two things in the one song lyrically, if I can. Or if it's just a straight sort of R&B sort of up tempo thing or shuffly thing, I'll try and put a bit of humour in it. If you're in a bar, that sort of thing. I'll try and make a funny situation, or have a play on the words or something like that.
There's something you said there which is really interesting to me, because I think I do it and I'd like to explore it for a second, which is you said like getting, in a way, you're getting two meanings in a song. There's like that kind of So when I've tried to do that myself, and I think I know what you're talking about, is like I always consider it as like the universal and the personal. And so like, and there's a sort of combination between saying something without sounding like an idiot or a hippie, like there's a universal truth or universal message. So like could be political or ecological or just even like, I don't know, emotional. And then within that, there's like the personal thing of like, I might be going through something, or I might be wanting to say something, and it's trying to wrap, for me, it's like wrapping the two things up so that it feels like my expression, but hopefully the person listening is able to take it in their own world as well. So is that similar to what you mean by that?
Yeah, exactly. And I've always, and it's personal taste really, I've always enjoyed lyrics that the more you hear them, or every time you hear them, you hear something different, or I'm not, I mean, the sort of ultimate hero in that respect is Leonard Cohen.
Right.
I just, I mean, he was astonishing at it, but he worked at it a lot harder than I do. I mean, he used to write tens of, or sort of like 30 verses, and then whittle it down to about 5, didn't he?
Right.
His song. I mean, I'm not into that. not time's too short for that. But that's a sort of lyric writing I really appreciate, along with the old great American songbook writers like Cole Porter, people like that, who have their wordplay, and of course Chuck Berry, have the story going, but they're having a play with the words along the way, or clever rhymes and things like this. Clever imagery, nice imagery, as well as just telling a story. I've always liked that about some songwriters.
Playfulness, a kind of playfulness, and
exactly. Yes, yeah.
I mean, that's definitely there in your writing. Like you said, a bit. One of the things I've seen happen when you play songs is people connect very quickly to the songs, because because you also like this. You have like more abstract stuff, like you were saying, but there's sometimes songs like Night and Day, as you know, is one of my favorite songs of yours. Or Pig in the Middle is another favorite, and it's like you are able to connect people through your storytelling and through the kind of truth, actually the human truth condition of like maybe splitting up with someone, or you're very good at like getting that across to somebody. And I don't mean it in a simple way, because I don't mean that, because they're very beautifully poetic, but there's a way, you do have a way of kind of like, I think Bruce Springsteen does it, where like he just writes the truth and then gives it to the audience, and the audience get it straight away. And I've seen that happen so many times with you. It's like it's a really kind of, there's an honesty to it, but there's a kind of like a kind of everymanism in a way, like a kind of, would that be fair to say that? It's like a
absolutely. No, yeah. I feel that I can't, even with Stackridge, I couldn't write to order.
Right.
And I still can't. It's not going to happen. But I mean, if someone said, "Oh, we need you to write a 3-minute pop song," then it just wouldn't happen. I just go the other way, and I'd start writing songs about 10 minutes long. I mean, luckily I'm my own man, so I can just please myself what I write. And some songs are 3 minutes, some are 10 minutes. But all of them, no matter how long or short they are, I do want them to be true to me.
Yeah,
have that integrity. Where because I don't sing them flatly. I always want to put some emotion in the singing. Some feeling or emotion in the singing, and you can't do that if you've just got bland lyrics or something that you're not enjoying singing about, or a story that you honestly want to tell people.
Let's just rewind for a second. In the Man in the Bowler Hat, that was recorded with, I believe, George Martin, right, as a producer. Tell us like what that experience was like and what you learned from him as a writer, or how that was.
Because before I joined Stackridge, James and Andy were massive Beatles fans. They knew them, all the Beatles songs. They could play them all, especially James. So I was sort of originally, when I was a young teenager, when they first came along, I was impressed with them, like everybody else. Then the Stones came along, and I was sort of the Stones came along about the same time I met adolescence. So it was sort of, I thought, this is much more, this is much edgier, much sort of. So then I sort of diverted from the Beatles, and then didn't really revisit them till about '69, when they were sort of coming to the end. So it was when we were going to heard that they secured George Martin to record the next album, which we didn't know it was going to be called. That obviously James and Andy were absolutely cock a hoop, and but he was so good in putting you at your ease. He just before we got to the studio, we'd go around he had an apartment in London, so we'd go around there and sit down at a keyboard and sit and play him the songs, or put this one on, and might put this one on. And so he'd play him the songs, and he'd listen to them, and oh yes, that's interesting. That yes, all right, I quite like that, and all this. And then when we got to the studio and everything was set up, we start playing a song, and there was one on this album called The Galloping Gaucho, which was my tune. And we all start off, and it's a sort of dip, 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 dip. Anyway, we started off, bang, everyone together, go all the way through, stop. And he said, no. He said we make it more interesting than that. So it started off with just a Hammond and a triangle.
Right, okay.
So immediately you thought, oh yeah.
Okay.
So rather than have everything sort of blasting along, or or not blasting along, but just sort of chugging along from A to B, all of a sudden you've got a much more interesting path through the woods. So that was I think that was the first song we did, because that was one that we knew the best and we'd been gigging the most. And that, but from then on, I thought, oh yes, okay, you don't have to have it blasting out. Recording isn't the same as playing on stage.
No. It's a different art form altogether, isn't it? But that's quite interesting, actually, because I mean, one of the things I see you do when you just play on your own, you see some people playing, they really chug through a song, don't they? They're just like, they start at the same point and they end at the same point. And it's good for them. It's great, like, energy. But like, the other day I saw you playing, and it was like you announced at the start, it's like 3 or 4 key changes, and you actually is like loads of dynamic in your writing. There's loads of like interesting things and pulling back and releasing, and it's interesting to hear talk about George, and just maybe that had an influence on the way you went forward as a writer. But it's something which is very very clear in your songwriting. I think the kind of ability to sort of move through musical movements, and that's something which I think in modern songwriting isn't quite as adventurous. There's
I can't remember who it was that I said, I can't remember, I read it somewhere. But it was quite a well-known songwriter. For the life of me, I can't think who it was. But they were saying they decried modern songwriting. Well, it's not really songwriting, is it? Because it some of these modern. I'm going to sound like a real old fogey now. Anyway, they just, they have dynamics, but it doesn't. Melodically, they don't go anywhere.
That's interesting. I spoke to a younger songwriter than you and I, who was actually saying the same thing, that like they're kind of melodically, from American writer who writes a lot of pop stuff, just saying that the melodies are not as adventurous as they used to be. That's I guess this is a sign of the times, really, but it's something which is definitely. A good melody is like winning the World Cup, isn't it? It's like, if you can find a hunt for the melody, it's the kind of thing that keeps it going.
There was this, like I mentioned, this new song that we'll be attacking again tonight. No, I'm not attacking it. I was unhappy with the first 4 bars of the top line melody.
Yeah.
And and I thought, no, that's boring. It's nothing. And then I sort of accidentally started singing a 6th, I think, up to no, not a 6th, 4th, but a 5th. I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't a note in the chord.
Yeah,
it's in the key, but not in the chord.
Yeah,
and then I was sort of doing that on it. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And then I went down to the 2nd chord, and then I thought, oh, well, after that is a bit of interesting. I just dropped down an octave from one note down to another one.
Nice.
And so I thought, oh, yeah, that's quite nice. It's interesting. Then sort of dies away a bit. And then, of course, the 3rd chord is a minor, changes up, but you can sing the first melody line over that one as well.
Okay.
So all of a sudden, I thought, yes, that's it. I cracked it.
It's really interesting. It's interesting to hear you talk like that, because especially coming not from a musical, if you like, technically musically sort of someone like me, there's a lot of that kind of thing where the when you're working out the melodies and the chords, that kind of mechanical element of it, I suppose, is kind of like it's good fun, but it's like when the pattern kind of eventually comes, like it felt like it was always meant to be there. It's almost like it's kind of you're given a task of being given these two things and you've got to work it out, and then when you get it, it's like, okay, like that's the thing. Where do you think songs come from? Do you think they come from, you believe in the muse? Do you think they come from you or from through you, or what do you make of all that kind of element?
No, I think it's cerebral. It's the mind at work and at play. And I think the parts, the sort of integral part of that is one, your formative years, whether you hear music or there's something in you that's attracted to music, attracted to tunes, even when you're a little kid. My grandmother used to play the piano.
Yeah.
And when I was 3, 4, there was one piece of music that I used to nag her whenever I visited her. Insisted she play. It's called the March of the Tin Soldier, and I just loved it because I could march around pretending to be a soldier. She played it. So obviously there was something in me that was into the listening. Much rather listen to a tune or hear a melody than what other kids do. I know there was a time, I might have been 11, I was round a friend's house. We were going to go up and play football, and he had 2 cousins there, and they were playing records, old 78s on a record player. And it was like Buddy Holly songs and stuff like, and some terrible Pat Boone songs. But anyway, Buddy Holly and 1 or 2 Elvis tunes. And I was listening to this, and then mate sort of said, "Oh, with the football," I said, "Right, let's go then." I said, "No, I'm going to stay here and listen to this." It's just like,
yeah.
So I think you have to have that to start with, and then that leads you into trying to be in a band, trying to learn an instrument, playing, and then you've got the will. Then if you start writing, it's that wealth of experience on top of that. So I think that's all obviously in your brain. That's all part of it, and then I just need a quiet time for the brain just to float away and not really thinking of anything.
Yeah.
Accidentally hear something in my head or accidentally hit the wrong chord, and then the brain sort of all those pieces start lining up, forming a cue to get the production line for the next song.
That's a really good explanation.
To me,
works.
That's how it feels to me. Yeah.
Excellent. So, I mean, I think you and I are quite alike in certain ways where, like, I think, because I mean, I've seen you knock out, sorry, knockout's not the word, but like, I've seen you release quite a few, I think maybe 3 albums since we got to know each other a bit better. So there is like a very kind of, what I like about the way you work and the way the band works, it's quite a disciplined and keep on releasing, keep on getting stuff out. And often I find sort of songwriters are a bit reluctant to release because they kind of need it to be like some massive statement, or they need it to become successful, or whatever they've got in their own heads. But what I really love about you as a songwriter, because you've had massive success and all this kind of stuff, is that you just carry on. And like, it's like you are a working, living being a songwriter, right? It's not a cerebral kind of like idea or hobby. It's like, I do this and I release it and I keep doing it, and I've got my band and I love it and I build my fan base and I keep releasing. So is it important to you for like to be an active original songwriter, to keep doing it?
Yes. Oh yeah. Vital. I can't imagine not doing it now. We were well, as you know, we released the last album in October, and we're aiming to go in the studio to work on the next album in January.
Yeah.
And I've got, with this new one, once I got the words, that'd be 13 songs for that. And we would have gigged all of them. I would have made sure that we rehearse. We get together as often as we can at the rehearsal room, but they never sound finished until you've gigged them a few times as well.
Yeah.
So we've already done a whole set of the new songs into the second set, where it was all new songs that nobody'd heard before. And they've worked into the set now. So this one that once that's finished, we'll work that one in as well.
Right.
So it's important. It's important for me to do it. I don't see the point in not playing them to people or not having them so people can't hear them.
Yeah. But you're definitely very prolific. You know, it's like, do you tend to just sit around with the guitar and write every day, weekly, or is it just as and when you feel it?
Well, yeah, when I feel it, really. You know, I certainly don't do it every day. If I think, if I've got the house to myself and it's nice and quiet, I think, I might, get the guitar out and see what happens. But now, there's no point me writing a load of stuff now other than this one. That's what I say. I mean, if a good one comes up, then it'll be a different matter. But I'm sort of consciously thinking, right, we've got more than enough for the next album.
Okay.
And this new one's going to be 8 minutes long, I should imagine. So there's a time factor. So there's not much point me writing a load of stuff on top of this, because we won't get round. I suppose a lot of the new stuff on this album we start next year, I wrote 2-3 years ago.
Okay.
I just recorded it on the phone, on a voice recording on the phone. And then I thought, right, then of course, think, all right, start working on the new songs. Now I've got to relearn them because I completely forgot.
That's so true. That's so true. I get that.
What the chord sequence is.
I get that. Like I'm kind of like at the moment recording like an album, and then you're like, God, I can't remember what I was doing there. That's so true. So what do you reckon the ratio is for you? Like, I mean, there's a lot of music people that aren't songwriters that listen to this podcast, but people that are. So when you're deciding to like take, let's say, the next squad of 10 to be recorded, what do you reckon the ratio is as a writer from like, is it like out of 30 songs you'll get 10, or out of 50 ideas you'll get 10? What's the kind of like ratio could you say, do you reckon?
Well, I would say it's pretty well, sort of 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, yeah. because we've got that process of proofing it out with the band.
Yeah.
If something that doesn't engage the band, or obviously if a little section of it doesn't engage the band, then I'll think, yeah, you're right, that is a bit lazy, and so I'll think about it and work around it. So by the time we rehearsed it, and we've got it nailed well enough to play the gig, and then we've gigged it, pretty well. That's it, really. The last what was the last recording? Last set of recording, which is back before 3 years ago now, I suppose 4 years, 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago. We because we knew the song so well, we blitzed it. I think we recorded about 11 or 12 songs. So there's only 9 on the album, so 3 just sort of to pick the ones that work the best recordings, the strongest songs, and some just fall by the wayside because they didn't quite make the cut. Yeah. But it's not. Sometimes we'll revitalize. We're thinking of revitalizing one for this next album because it's quite a nice song. But whether we do or not, we don't know. It's just in that way of it is knowing, because you even on CDs you're limited to how much time you can put on one CD to make it a decent recording.
So Stackridge famously was like was this like the first band to ever play at Glastonbury Festival?
We were the first band. Yeah, we opened it and closed it.
Brilliant. And obviously that's become like a kind of huge thing. But that is very cool. It's very cool to be the first band to remember. That's a great thing to have to have done. But obviously at that point, nobody could have known that festival would have become what it was, right? It's a different.
Well, no, Michael Eavis maintains there was 1,000 at the first one, 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I maintain it's probably more like 600 and a dog and 2 goats. It was, yeah, and I can remember the changing room was his kitchen.
Brilliant.
That's what the dressing room was.
Brilliant.
And I can remember thinking as we were playing, and I was wondering about poor bloke, poor dairy farmer. He's lost a fortune. He's never going to do this again. So I mean, I wouldn't have imagined how old I'd be 20. No, yeah. Here I am, over 50 years later, still talking about it.
It's just funny, isn't it? So sometimes, I mean, we've all played those kind of festivals you speak of, where you know that someone's probably lost a few grand, and there is the dog, and sometimes you just don't know how things are going to go, and that's the same with records, songs, or life, isn't it? You
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No. So tell me a little bit about your you were either working with or with Elton John for a while. What was that whole part of your career?
The Man in the Bowler Hat was our 3rd album and final album for MCA as a label. They didn't basically because we didn't sell enough for anybody to make any money. Yeah. So we were up for grabs, and that was it. Luckily enough, at the same time that Elton John was founding Rocket Records.
Right.
And so obviously, no point on the Rocket record label, because he was still committed to DJM at the time. Yeah. He obviously needed a stable of bands or some artists to put out on his record label. Yeah. And I think, I mean, he's always had listened out to other music, what other people do. He still does. He obviously heard about the band or heard the band, and I think we did a demo, and he signed us.
Brilliant.
And he was really supportive, really. And when I sort of wrote a little piece about him for a fanzine, online sort of fan thing. And when I looked into how many albums he was releasing, and he was like touring the world, he was recording, releasing 2 albums a year, and he still found time had to be at Rocket Records, or when he came to the release party for Extravaganza, he was like always found time to chat, always friendly. It was a really nice bloke, and he wanted me to carry on and do a solo career. Okay. When Stack packed up, but I hadn't written anything for yonks, so I had nothing original in the backpack, and I was sort of, obviously, my young wife, after 2 years of barely seeing me, was having second thoughts. So anyway, I just thought, well, I've got nothing to offer, and I've done it for 6 years. I'm 26 now. I've had my shot. So I said no thanks, thanks but no thanks, and retired to Yeovil and became a leather tanner.
Oh, wow. But still here today, knocking out songs and making all those albums, which is it's something which I think is it's great to see someone still love songwriting and still be doing it, and feel like it's their life passion and something they really believe in. It's great to see and hear. Yeah. So who are your main songwriting influences, would you say?
Right. Okay. I mentioned Leonard Cohen, Tom Petty. I've got a lot of time for.
Yeah.
I I love the simplicity of his, I mean it in a nice way, that this chord, four chords, maybe 5 chords in a song, if that.
Yeah.
But it's just the melodies he can concoct. So I've certainly got a lot of time with him. There's I say new one on the block. He merged about 5 years ago. Michael Kiwanuka.
Yeah, he's
I
great.
like a lot.
Yeah, very good.
Obviously the old Holland, Dozier in Holland, and Marvin Gaye, Stevie Wonder, Stevie Winwood.
Some good names there. Good names. What advice would you give a songwriter? There's going to be people listening to this that are established, people that are brand new, people that kind of hobby around, and none of us are songwriters. I think when you get to a certain point in your career as a songwriter, you realize that I think sometimes there's like a bit of competition between bands, but when you get past all that bullshit, you realize that we're all like very connected because we share the same thing. So when I'm asking you this, is that kind of when I ask anybody for their advice they'd give a songwriter, is within the remit of like, you're just you being you, and what would you offer as advice, if you like, or what would you say to a songwriter? What kind of have you learned, and what would you give them as advice to kind of think about from your point of view as Mutter Slater?
Yeah, okay. Well, obviously, we all start by learning songs that our heroes have written, which is great. It's a great way of sort of getting into how songs work, really, which is great. But if you've got to the stage where there's a little voice in you saying, "Oh, it'd be nice if the song did this," or "Wouldn't it be nice?" Oh, no. Or something comes up, you think, "Oh, that's good. I mean, you might use that," and then you think, "Oh no, perhaps I won't." Listen to that inner voice and stay with it.
Yeah, very good.
Even if somebody says, "Oh," because I've had that before. I sort of play a song to somebody and they say, "Oh, that's just like so and so," but don't worry about that. Don't follow that little voice. Let's keep listening out for that little voice inside of you saying, "Yeah, that's right. That works," and encourage it.
Love that. That's really, really great advice, because that's who you are, isn't it? That's your seed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because any audience will soon suss out any sort of hokum. Yeah,
that's true. That's true. Mutter, thank you for your time. And let me ask you the final question, which I ask everybody, which is, will change from day to day. But if you could have written anyone else's song, so a song you didn't write, if you could have lived with it in your head and had been thinking about it, what song by somebody else would you love to have written?
Oh my Lord, God, what a question! Oh my Lord, oh, I'm going to say one and then immediately think, "Oh no, I should have said that." Anyway, okay, right. All right. Is it Tower of Song, Leonard Cohen?
Nice.
Tower
Good choice. What a connoisseur type of choice that is. That's very, very culturally.
Well, good, isn't it? Because actually, I was surprised myself there, because it's about songwriting.
Yeah, brilliant. But, no, it's really interesting just to capture people in the moment for that, and that's. I'm thinking of forming a little playlist of all the songs people have come up with, because it's been quite interesting to hear.
All right. Yeah.
But anyway, thank you, Mutter, for your time. And listeners of this podcast, where should they go? MutterSlaterBand.com, is that it? Is that where to go and find your work?
MutterSlater.co.uk.
So that's MutterSlater.co.uk.
And then there's Mutter Slater Band on Facebook, and Mutter Slater Band on Spotify, and
fantastic. Thank you, Mutter, for your time, and really, really a pleasure
to
to talk to you.